guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Jo and I'm so glad you're here. So I want to bring something up. What if your anxious thoughts and worries aren't actually telling you the truth? What if they're simply repeating an old story, an old nervous system pattern that has kind of been taught or learned long ago, inherited maybe? And today's card that we pulled is the Nine of Swords. And this card, I feel, may not be predicting disaster at all. It may be inviting you into what I think is one of the deepest acts of healing we can ever practice, becoming kind to our own minds. And the traditional image shows someone sitting upright in the bed, overwhelmed by thoughts, and most people interpret this as anxiety, worry, guilt, fear. And it 100%, depending on your spread and your question, can reveal that. But today I'd like to offer a different perspective. So the Nine of Swords isn't always about what is happening in this moment. It's about what the mind is conditioned to expect and predict. And sometimes this card kind of can ask a very surprising question. Whose fear are you carrying? Is this really your worry? Or does it maybe come or belong to a parent who always expected the worst, a family system and way of thinking that maybe believed peace could never last? Maybe even just it's your culture that taught you to stay vigilant because something bad was always around the corner. And the mind is remarkable because it learns patterns designed to keep us safe. But over time, these protective patterns can continue firing like long after the danger has passed, and they become unuseful. Couldn't think of a better word. But something I've observed in my own life has brought this card into much sharper focus. My grandmother, who is about to turn 90, who lives in a different city than me, often messages me, I'm worried about you, how are you? And then last night, I woke up this morning to messages from her last night going on about who am I with, where am I, where, all these crazy kind of worrying thoughts, like, I'm worried about you, please let me know you're okay. And watching this unfold has helped me see something much bigger. And it's so great that I got this card this morning. But basically in my family, and I'm sure in many of yours, worrying became one of the ways people expressed love. And if you worried about someone, it meant you cared. If you anticipated every possible disaster, it felt like you were protecting them. But I've started asking myself, does worry actually protect anyone? Or does it simply keep both people living inside imagined futures that never arrive? And what if love doesn't need anxiety in order to be real? What if the greatest gift we can offer someone or ourselves isn't our worrying mind, but our peaceful heart? So imagine the difference between kind of silently thinking, I hope nothing bad happens. Maybe not even going into the things, but I hope nothing bad happens. And versus quietly holding someone in your heart with the feeling, may you be safe, may you be held, may life unfold with grace. I trust your path. These are two very, very different energies. One contracts and the other expands. And this brings me to another beautiful lesson hidden in this card, in the Nine of Swords. When anxious thoughts appear, our first instinct is often to fight them, to argue with them, to make them disappear, to solve them. But what if the mind itself isn't asking to be defeated? What if it's asking to be understood, to be witnessed? Think of your mind as like a kind of frightened child that has been trying to protect you for years. Because often these patterns and these belief systems and things of the mind were planted there in childhood, were conditioned in childhood. And the mind doesn't need punishment, this little child in us. It needs compassion. And every time you meet your fearful thoughts with kindness instead of resistance, something extraordinary happens. Your heart comes online. Compassion begins to soften that fear, and it begins to heal. So instead of believing every anxious thought, you simply place a gentle hand on your heart and say, thank you for trying to protect me. I know you're doing your best. And that small moment of kindness changes everything. It is one of the deepest realizations I've had, is that like no thought is rooted in reality in the way that we assume. Thoughts are interpretations. They're predictions, they're memories, they're stories, they're filters. And the mind isn't reality itself. Reality is always this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this sky above me, the sensations that are happening in this moment. And everything else is a mental construction. So that doesn't mean that your thoughts are wrong. It simply means that they aren't the whole truth. You don't have to believe every thought simply because your mind produces it. And there's another layer to this card that I absolutely love. And it's like the number 9. It represents completion. And often 9s appear just before a breakthrough. And why? I mean, why would this be? Because the old identity senses it's losing control. The anxious mind gets louder as the fearful version of you begins to dissolve. So sometimes what feels like overwhelming fear isn't a warning to stop. It's evidence that you're growing beyond your identity that once believed fear was necessary for survival. And so if this card found you today, perhaps your practice isn't to eliminate anxiety. Perhaps it's simply just to become kinder to the one who's experiencing it. Notice the thought. Thank the mind for trying to help. Return to the heart. Hold yourself and the people you love with compassion instead of worry. This is powerful because love held in the heart has a very different quality than love filtered through fear and thoughts of worry. And maybe that's the real invitation of the 9 of Swords, to notice every time your mind reaches for worry as a way of loving and instead make a different choice. Your power is in your choice. Place the person in your heart, maybe yourself, rather than in your fears. Wish them ease instead of imagining their struggles. Offer trust instead of catastrophe. Because the energy we hold for one another really, really matters. A worrying mind sends fear into the future. A compassionate heart sends love into the present, into this moment. And if you ask me, the heart always has been more powerful than the mind could ever be. So that love will reach beyond any worry could ever reach. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, please like and share and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next read.